just done that.
Thank you. Rach, do you want to start, and then I can just just jump in. Yeah, what can you remember? This feels like it's been a long birth, doesn't it, this book?
Yes, actually, and we can probably do a whole different Q&A on how to write a book and get it out into the world, because that's a different matter altogether. But yeah, so this all started for me when I went for some thinking environment training with Sophie to improve my coaching. In fact, I just started my business called Thinking Stream, and I thought I better understand what thinking is all about. So I looked up and started to do some training with Sophie. And at that time, I had a sort of a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, so something like that with my children. And I was really just learning about the thinking environment. I always remember coming away from the first session with Sophie thinking, well, yeah, I do this really well in my coaching. I give, I don't interrupt. I give people space to think for themselves. And then I realized, at tea that night, I was totally interrupting. I was talking over the kids. I was doing everything that was the opposite to being a thinking environment. And so it really got me interested in, and it's only over the years that Sophie and I have had conversations where I've said, about what, things that have gone on with my kids and how I've handled them differently because of the thinking environment, because I've done certain things that I wouldn't have even thought of to do. And so we ended up just having conversations like that. And I remember both Jem and Una being born, and, sharing stories and providing as much ease as I could for Sophie at that beginning time. And then we would laugh going, hang on a minute, we're both coaches, we're both trained in this. This should be so natural, but it isn't, because the theory's so much easier than in practice and in the moment. And the thing about children is it's just so unpredictable. So that's when we started going, well, how do we make this a bit simpler? What do we do? And so we just looked at each of the components to begin with and just tried to translate those to parenting. And Sophie, at the time, your kids were particularly smaller, weren't you? And you remember you saying you put the postcard, we've created these postcards and we put them on the fridge, and you were like, actually, it's just really working for me. Never mind if I don't, if it doesn't help anyone else, it's just working. So that's when we got more interested, and we ran some courses where we just talked to mums and felt our way through it, and ultimately decided, wouldn't it be great to write a book? So the proceeds of the course started to pay for some of the book, really, and that's sort of how it started to happen. And then writing the book was interesting, because it was like, well, hang on a minute, this needs to be for parents, B, as simple as it can be without losing some of the understanding, the complexity behind it. The right size, so it's in your handbag. We started with it being a bit of a recipe book, didn't we? So that you just sort of what you need in the moment flick to was our idea of it. And then, yeah, trying to make it richer with real life stories. So it's really been a great journey for us to reflect on what have we done in those situations, and how have we practically brought some of those components to life. And yeah, I think the stories have really been good for us, but we struggle to get them because often they come out of conversations like this. So the other thing that we did to help us write the book was we started to record some podcasts on each of the components, which we'll tell you more about, but that's another thing that you can tap into. And it just helped us have the conversation. And then we went, oh yeah, that is a good point. And then we wrote the book. So that's sort of some of it. But yeah, Sophie, do you want to carry on with other things that you wanted to add?
It's some of that journey. So I think so when I had Jem, and I carried him in my baby sling, and at the time, so I'm part of Time to Think's faculty, which means I certify coaches and facilitators, and occasionally we have calls with Nancy as faculty. And I remember on this particular faculty call, I was on I had my earbuds in, and I had Jem in the sling, and Nancy said, what's the most important thing for you in a thinking environment in the next 10 years? And everyone was going around and sharing what they wanted to do in their work. And I just looked at Jem and I'm like, I want him to grow up in a thinking environment. Like, that feels to me what is the most important contribution I can make in this work. And I suppose in some ways a bit to age, like I didn't really know how, like I didn't know like how hard that was going to be. And I suppose what I discovered in those early years of mothering was a lot of the kind of the tools and techniques and kind of leadership things I'd learned over my leadership journey. I just couldn't translate them into my parenting because I was really tired. I didn't have any of the structures of my life around me. I didn't have the systems of a business around me. And so I think what Rachel and I started to do was like try and find some, not shortcuts, but signposts. So it's like, so when I was really tired and I couldn't kind of work out, right from wrong or what I was doing, like what could I just come back to that was really simple as a practice? And I think we first started with stop, drop, connect. So I think that was the first one that was like, okay, if I do nothing else, like what can I do? And even that practice just came out of like, that's just what I ended up doing is I would just stop what I was doing. I would get down to my kids' level and I'd connect with them. And I'd be like, that was all I could do some days. I mean, some of the stories when I write them in the book, I'm like, it's hard, like parenting is really, really hard. And so it just kind of came from that. We were just trying to find, well, what's really practical, what's really useful, what works. And I forgot we did those courses. I was like, how did I forget that? And I suppose because we are teachers and there was just a desire to kind of share with others, but also because I know as a teacher, I learn the most by sharing, and so there was something in that. And then I guess part of writing the book was I really wanted to have something to give Jem and Una to say, like, I know that, kids always internalize assumptions and there'll always be things that they say I could do better. But I wanted to have something to say, well, this is what I was trying to do. I might not have done it well all the time, but this is what me as your mum I was trying to do and felt really important. And what's been really lovely is that like there is a journey to writing a book. But actually I've shared a lot of the stories with the kids and I've shared, they obviously know quite a lot of the practices and it resonates with them. They're like, oh yeah, that is what we did. And that is how it, and so there's something for me about it. It was just a way of sharing this work. But what was, I guess, the driving, like one of the things we were really clear on is we wanted to write the smallest and most useful book we could. And that proved to be really hard. Like, I think it might be easier to write a really big book where you just stuff everything in. And so I think that was also really important. We didn't want it to be something that was overwhelming. We didn't want it to be something that you felt like you had to do, or if you didn't follow it, we didn't want it to be like, it's not rules, it's just like, this is what we thought. What do you think? And I think that I think we've done that. I hope, that it's like you can read it in one go, but actually then you can dip in and out of what's really important. And it's interesting, like I look at my kids and I know we're all biased about our own kids. My kids are exceptional listeners. Like they are exceptional listeners. And I think it's like their superpower. And often people say to me, how did you get your kids to listen? Like my kids won't listen. And I know it's like they've been listened to. They've been listened to. And in some ways, I think the book, there's loads in there, but I still think that simplicity of if we listen to our children, they do, like they will do it. And I just hope that simplicity of if you did nothing else after reading the book but you listened longer, it's like that's it. I think in some ways that's all and everything. Was there anything else, Rach, you wanted to add? I feel like I've gone on.
Well, only to just reiterate that we didn't want this book to be a rule book. I'm not very good with rules anyway, but we really wanted it to be just something that we shared, but then for you to find your own way within it. So really don't want it to be something that's precise because what I know, and so my background is I'm been a coach for over 20 years, but about 7 years ago I started a not-for-profit called Flying School, which was helping children learn how to fly. as in develop confidence and leadership type skills. And so I've been doing this in schools and practicing. And I guess what I've learned is that they really can do it. So the things that I was doing with adults that might be opening rounds like we did at the beginning, or thinking pairs, I've been trying that with children in schools, and they just get it. They're ready to learn, they're ready to do it. So I think sometimes we underestimate what they're capable of actually, but we also make it very complicated parenting, don't we? Where we're trying to do, certainly for me, I felt a huge responsibility to be the best parent I could be. At the end of the day, I was a coach, and if I couldn't do it well, then nobody could do it well. And I think that pressure doesn't help us be the right parent. So it's always remembering that only I know how to parent my way, and only I know what my children need, which is different to everybody else's children. So no book can give us that prescription. It's just there as a guide in case it's helpful in the moment, I guess. Um,
We might do is just open the floor for either, like, you could just share your reflections, just like we have, or if there is a particular question. So again, we'll just have an open forum for questions, thoughts, and Ursula, you have your hand up. But yeah, you can either put your hand up or you can come off mute. But yeah, what do you think or feel or want to say?
Yeah, I had a question, Sophie and Rachel, so thank you. It's so interesting. Just how you kind of make it up as you go along. And it's trying to be aware in the moment of what does my child need right now, without trying to rescue them. I wondered if there was one component that you struggled to transfer to parenting more than the others.
Great question.
I'll jump in, Rach, and then you can jump in. I think it's changed. So I think it changes over time. And I think what's really important for me about the components is so there's 10 of them, which in and of itself is quite a lot, isn't it? And so I don't think of them as like, oh, I've got to do all 10 really well all the time, because in some ways they do work as a system. And so I think if I'm doing one, the others will probably be showing up as well. So I think when the children were little, for me, the component of place was the one that I struggled with the most. And by the definition of that, like really treating myself like I matter, so really looking after my sleep, not trying to do everything all at once. And so when my kids were really little, that felt really important, and also, the question we have though is, do they feel safe, seen and loved, is in some ways that's what they most needed at that time. And yet in me doing that, like really looking after and nurturing their need for place, mine kind of got out of balance. And then now, as they get older, I think, there's components of like information. How can I offer what I know without telling them what to do? The difference, again, like sometimes, and that can manifest, like my kids at the moment are really into rock climbing. So my husband's a rock climber, they really love rock climbing. And there's something about like really delighting in that, but not getting too attached to it. Because all of a sudden in my head, I'm like, oh, well, that's great because they've got a club and they've got an identity and they've got all this stuff. And it's like, they might go off climbing next week. So it's I'm just being mindful of like not attaching my desire for them to be grounded and happy in that identity they've got at the moment. So yeah, so for me, I think it changes all the time. And as Mark will know, like the component that I always like I first found in this work and that always draws me back is ease. And that core question, like what is most important? I was thinking if I just come back to one of them, that's the one I come back to. Like what's most important in this moment, in this day? Yeah, Rach, did you have anything?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? What we didn't say when we were talking about why we started the book is that the first title for the book was called Feeling Ease, because we just wanted people to feel at ease when they read the book, and we were just trying. I can't tell you how hard it was to get a title to that book. That we could probably write a book on writing a title, couldn't we? Because for whatever reason, it took us a long time to get to Raising Thinkers. But Well, what you're asking actually is what was difficult, which one was hardest to translate. And so I agree with Sophie, it does change with the ages of your children. But so for me, the one that springs to mind is encouragement. Because I think if I reflect back as a mum, I probably was over encouraging. You know, I was like constantly going, why don't you try this? And why do you do that? And I think you can do that. And I think that'd be brilliant. And there's loads of positives, just like, and I wonder, and so so the question for me was, how do I help them find their own sense of encouragement without me, it's like almost overdoing it. So I think I find that one a tricky one. And also I think it's hard when so encouragement's about staying curious longer. And I think it can be hard to not say everything that you want to say, and let them find that answer. So how do you stay quiet? I think is one of the hardest things you can do as a parent, because you feel like you need to have the answer because you're the parent, and actually you've got loads of experience. And one thing to just keep reminding myself was I haven't got experience of being their age at this time of life. You know, I might have been 10 before, but not in this world. And so I think it is really reminding us that they have got the best sense of what's needed. And it's very easy as parents to go, well, actually, no, they haven't. They're only little. They haven't had experience yet, which is obviously why they need sometimes our information. But how do you do that information in a way that doesn't tell them what to do? It gives them information. And I think they're tricky ones to navigate as parents, because again, sometimes we don't think we've got enough time. And we need to answer. Oh my God, they've asked me for advice. I need to give it now because they're never going to ask me again, you know. And so really not giving advice when they ask you is really hard to just go, what do you think first? So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and if I can just say, Ursula, as well, in terms of like from a thinking environment theory basis, like what was the hardest? I think incisive questions was quite challenging to translate for parents, because there's a lot of work that we do around assumptions and the language of assumptions and understanding how assumptions drive behavior. Actually, as a busy parent, how much of that do we need to know? You know, so I think that component kind of took us quite a long time to think about, well, what's the essence of this? You know, what is it? If people could only do one thing, what would they do? Was there anything you wanted to reflect or share before I think Mark wanted to jump in?
No, thank you. Really interesting.
Mark, did you want to? You're just on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, just a reflection. So in our coaching company, our sort of focus isn't the type of people we work with, but the area of focus within coaching, so decision making. And it's very deliberate because genuinely, like, I've got a week coming up where in 1 week I'm working with primary school children around leadership and decision making, and the next week I'm in New York in a FTSE 100 company with some really senior leaders, basically doing exactly the same thing. So they're poles apart. But one thing that is both scary but also an opportunity, I think, with this stuff is I can't tell you the number of times we work with really senior corporate leaders, some who've got 30, sometimes 40 years of experience, who are crying out for help around prioritization. And when we teach them around the quality of their thinking will shape the quality of the decisions they make or influence. And that's a key part of senior leadership, is decision making and that whole ecosystem. It's a bit of an anathema. They want it, but they don't know how to do it. And they've been in industry 30, 40 years. And one of the reasons I'm really excited about the primary school bit is that those primary school kids one day will be in those FTSE 100 companies, some of them in New York. And I'm convinced that so many of the leadership qualities that you end up living out in adulthood are formed or not formed in childhood. So I wrote a little book on leadership in lockdown, and the whole philosophy of it was really trying to equip younger leaders. And the book's called I'm Not a Leader, with the word not crossed out. And the whole idea is, just because the world says you can't be a leader because you're not captain of a football team in a school or confident or good public speaker, that's only one style of leading. But I'm really excited because I think if we can help raise thinkers, I love the title of your book, by the way. I'm pleased for this one, not the other one. If we can raise thinkers some of the problems that we're facing with the corporate world much further down the line might be eroded, because what they're not seeing, so many of them, is that they're seeing thinking as a luxury, which they haven't got time for. And they would far, far rather just dial into more meetings and be busy, because thinking's hard. And when we eventually manage to convince them that actually the quality of their thinking completely transforms the quality of the teams around them, and then the decision making, sometimes which is multi-billion-dollar decision making, the penny drops. But it's dropping when they're 45, 55, older. And it could have dropped when they were 14, 15. So I'm super excited to see how this could scale. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just sort of a champion for it, because I think it will contribute to solving a huge problem for adults.
Yeah, and I mean, that sort of reflects my experience, Mark. You know, like I went through the whole school system, you know, and I did well. So I got my A-levels and I got my degree and I got my master's, and I was a good student. And actually, I'd never had to think for myself, really, within that structured school system. And then I remember being in my first job, like my first sort of senior leadership role, and thinking, oh, there's no book for this. Like, I can read leadership books, but there's no books on how to be the kind of leader I want to be. There's no, like, and I felt like I was having to learn it, you know, on the job, and it felt terrifying, because at that point I was meant to be competent, you know, I was being paid for a level of, and there is a vulnerability, I think, in making visible the thinking that happens in our heads. You know, there is a vulnerability to that, and yet actually that process of sitting with the frustration, feeling what we feel, you know, and working through that, the quality of thinking really improves. And I'm like, every time we can encourage a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or a 15-year-old to sit with that discomfort of not knowing and uncertainty and vulnerability, they're more likely to be able to think about other things. And yet if we don't have that practice, what we tend to do is what you're saying, is we distract ourselves. We kind of show confidence instead of competence. So we armor ourselves up as leaders, because actually what we feel is vulnerable. And actually, as of course, we can't know what to do, you know, but the same as my 11-year-old isn't going to know what to do the first day he starts secondary school, because he's never done it before. But if he can be allowed to feel how scary that is and feel the vulnerability, and me not rescue and me not solve and me not fix, he'll learn to trust himself. And so then when we're in these other situations, which are maybe higher risk, higher, you know, we've got something to draw on. And again, like when we think about thinking, like what inhibits thinking, you know, we're scared of being judged. We're scared of not being enough. We're scared of pushing people away. We're scared that people will see you know, who we are. And yet actually, those qualities of authenticity, vulnerability, that's what we need in leaders. So the very thing that scares us is the very thing we need, you know, and we don't want to parent that out of our kids, you know, if we can help it. We've got to be with them as they journey that. Cherie, sorry, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, please don't apologise. It's a really fantastic discussion, so thank you. And there's so many things that about the 10 ways that I've loved, and this conversation as well, which has just reminded me of all the things that I wish I'd probably did better. I was smiling that I used to have a narrative that I was a really good parent when big things used to happen, and a really bad parent when I used to find an empty orange juice carton and or a washing machine full of wet clothes. So that whole point about ease really struck home with me. So, and the equality as well. I learned very early on that I used to think I was really good at Christmas until we had a conversation quite young about why didn't we. She brought me home an Argos catalogue she'd found at school and said, can we go through this and choose? And so she presented me with a Christmas present list of rag rated. She'd coloured it green, red. I didn't even know that she knew there was a green, red and amber system of what she'd quite like to have, most like to have, really wanted. And we continued that tradition for right till this day now. So, but So top tip, you might think you know what they want, but you're rarely going to get them what they really want. I guess my question is about nurture. So just because of my own childhood and how that left me feeling as an adult, one of my key considerations was I knew that I knew nothing about parenting. But the most important thing to me was that Lily felt nurtured and loved. And it's about, do you see that theme running across all of these 10 ways? You know, because I guess my greatest fear is that, because she's quite a analytical thinker, is that she'll look back over her childhood and she'll pick out all the things I did less well. Um, yeah, I, which is why this week surprised me, because I think the older she's got, the more appreciative she's getting of her childhood, if you see what I mean. But yeah, my question really is about nurture and where it fits in this.
Yeah, I mean, shall I go and then pass to you? So, but I think it runs all the way through nurture. And interesting, at the start of when Ben was born, there was a program on TV called Child of Our Time, where they were following a group of children from very different backgrounds with very different upbringing who were born in the millennium. So every time I saw the program, these kids were at the age that Ben was at, and it was really interesting because they were literally looking at, is it nature or nurture, in terms of, you know, how we end up bringing them up. And I fully believe that it's nurture, and it runs all the way through in terms of really treating them. I mean, if you'd have asked me what's the component for you, it would be equality. Really treating them with this sense of equality, where we're interested, we ask them what they think, but also we ask them before we do stuff. So you know, there's been moments when I might have wanted to go to school and have an argument or say things, and I've actually asked permission for that. I've not just assumed that because I'm the mum, I'm going to do that. I've said, you know, what do you think? I'm thinking I'm going to go and talk about this. And I just think, so it's tiny things all the way through that fundamentally is about us treating them with a sense of equality. And one of the things I learned a lot from that program, actually, but one of the things I always remember was giving them choice. So, you know, when they were tiny, saying, okay, we can do this or this, it's one or the other. Which one should we do? And even that is useful to get this thing practicing rather than us deciding for them. And yeah, there was another one which was, you know, sometimes we've got to let them win. So if there's battles, sometimes they've got to win a battle.
Yeah.
But just picking up on what you said, Cherie, is that none of us at all. I mean, I don't know if people have watched Adolescence. I don't think it doesn't matter how great a parent you think you are. When you watch that program, you feel that you've not done the right thing by your children. You know, that we've all got times when we've not been brilliant parents. What we miss probably in our thinking is the balance of that. That yes, we were rubbish about the orange carton, which I think is brilliant, but actually, when it really mattered, we had the right conversation. And I think that's what this is about. It isn't about read this book and start being perfect. I think it's read this book to balance out and think about other ways of doing it, and why none of them are rocket science, but also they're not difficult to do. You know, but would you know about them? That's the thing. Would you have the time to even give your attention to them? So the fact you're in this room today, the fact you're reading the book, means you're already doing a great job as parents, I think.
Oh, well, I actually loved it as well, because we'd had a conversation. So even now, like I was saying, is that I think it helps with the language as well for me, because, you know, while she's making choices today about next week and next month and next year, and I'm thinking, whoa, what you think you're going to have a year off? I'm like, where's that come from? You know, it's all that sort of stuff. I'm going, okay. Oh, why are you thinking that? That's interesting. That's interesting. What does Phil think? You know, I love that. It's really helpful to have the language as well, and to be able to think, you know, even at this point, I need to stop, drop, and connect.
What your question has made me think about, Cherie, is like when we use the word nurture, like what do we mean by that? And when you said it, I I think nurture is a feeling. So I feel nurtured. I don't think you can, I think there are things you can do to make me
That's
feel
what I wanted
nurtured.
to, yeah.
I think I think it's a feeling. And so for me, I think the component of place really draws to that, is that, you know, if I just ask myself that, like, does my child feel safe and seen, and do they feel loved? And the practice for this is, you know, like space, kindness, and gentleness. Because I'm like, well, actually, if we give them space, and if we create space, and our intention is kind, and we're gentle with ourselves and with them, I think the feeling we produce is one of feeling nurtured. But how we do that safe, seen, and how we do that will be different for each of us. But I think it's really interesting so my summary is, I think it's a byproduct. I think we feel nurtured when these components are present.
I think just to finish off, and I know Claire wants to come in, I heard a statistic this week that 89% of lone parents are women. And so if you assume that, you know, in that as well, you're also the main caregiver, but you're probably working full time. So what struck me when I was reading your book is that there is then the feeling of guilt that you're not always doing the school run because you're at work. You know, you kind of outsourcing a lot of child minding because you're getting up at 6 a.m, and, you know, you're getting on a train and getting back, and so there's all of that. So that you're primarily putting your child first, but you're also keeping a roof over your head first. So it's the combination of that, I think, is about how do you keep your child feeling safe in a space where you're trying to keep all of that together. So I think that's also struck me when I was reading the book about what it feels like parenting when you're a lone parent as well. And I thought that might be an interesting conversation to be having through the book, or as a progression, I think, because there will be a lot of that. That's quite, you know, an interesting.
It really is, and I think we both sort of said right at the beginning of the book that wasn't what our experience was,
No,
so
I
we couldn't
understand.
share from that. But equally, it's a huge thing. And just finally on nurture, if we're feeling guilty, then we're not actually able to nurture as much. So how do we let go of the guilt is quite a big thing, isn't it, in parenting? And the guilt comes from what we think we should be doing or should have done, but that's not necessarily the case. And there's always, yeah, I think that's a big one, isn't it? That guilt, that the way that guilt stops us from being the parents we really want to be.
Yeah. And society doesn't help us with that, doesn't it? Given all of the so-called media and the norms that they put out there that, you know, your child should be able to do Mandarin and everything else. You know, all the sorts of things that you're failing at in baby groups. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, Claire.
I'm just going to put, just before I pass to Claire, but my experience, so my mum was a single mum. So she was a single mum for 3 of us. And actually she didn't feel safe. So we had a lot of financial instability when I was growing up. But her priority was feeding us, in all honesty. Had she got enough money to buy the uniforms we needed for the next term? Did she have enough food to get us through to the end of the month? And yeah, so, and there was a, you know, an absence of, I would say, almost all of the components, you know, so there, you know, because she wouldn't have had a language for that. She was literally just doing the best she could with what she had. But I always felt loved. So I always knew my mum loved me. And actually she did some rubbish things, you know, it's like, but actually that kind of, I knew I was loved. And I just wonder if, even with everything we do, like, actually what's most important is if you love your kid, they know that, you know. So yeah. And sorry, Claire, thank you for your patience.
I was just about to laugh about the fact that we all start a lot of our interactions with "I'm sorry." It's actually Lucy who is wanting to ask a question. I don't know how to put my hand down. I think I do that right.
Just disappeared. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a quick reflection and a question. This is all really interesting, and I love the book. My reflection was just that my favorite one, if you encourage people to have favorite ones, is the appreciation. And maybe if it means anything to you, my love language is words of affirmation. So I just love all the qualities. I appreciate you in the back, and I've ticked my ones for my daughter, so I'm going to be trying to use those. So I really particularly enjoyed that one. And my question was, because my children are a lot younger, they obviously still have so much to learn. And they don't necessarily have the vocabulary to speak and anything yet. So how do you balance giving them the time to think with the fact that they are so young and they still have so much to learn from you?
Do you want to go first, Soph?
So I would say here, it's what's important is like the intention of your attention, because kids you're not gonna be able to sustain 5-minute conversations, but so I would say the practice there is like getting interested in whatever they're interested in. So if it's that they're playing something, can you be with them and give your attention to what that is without your phone, and because I think what we're doing there is building an expectation of your presence. And so then as they get older and they've got questions or they've got things they need to actually think through, you've already built those foundations of actually we're used to being with each other and we're used to kind of just doing one thing at a time and not being distracted. And getting interested, like kids are fascinating. I think the problem is when they're little, it's like they're fascinating and you're tired,
Yeah.
But the things they're interested in is like, can I just get interested in that? Because when they're older, what they're interested in will change, but they'll know you're interested.
Yeah.
So I think it's that, but I don't, and also with my kids, I kind of choose, I notice the moments where they're making bids for connection. So sometimes just in the busyness of life, we're just getting out of the house and getting our shoes on and someone's asking for a toothbrush and it's just the normal chaos of life. And then there's other times, like Jem will go to bed and then he'll just make some throwaway comment about someone at school and I'll be like, sounds interesting. And then I might at bedtime just say, I'll just get in and say, so you said something earlier, do you want to share? And he might have already forgotten it, So I think it's just noticing when you think you might need to kind of put your phone down and stop. Yeah, Rach, was there anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I remember we having this conversation, so and almost not wanting the book to be something that we've got to try and be doing in every moment of time. So for me, there's something about for instance, when they're little, just picking moments when they have your full attention, because it's so easy to just decide you'll get lots done because they're happy playing. So if they're happy playing, I think it's quite easy to just go, right, I'll do this, this, and this. And what if you just sat with them and played? And for me, I think one of the things I learned when they were little is how the extent to which I lead the play and go, oh, let's do this and let's do this, versus just play in the way they want to play and follow there. But I think I think it's just thinking of it as small moments. You don't need to do that 24/7, but those moments will make a difference. So I think those are the two things. And from what Sophie said, I think it is just about being present with them and not needing to always be saying stuff and doing stuff, but just being with them, marveling.
Just some really silly things as well, which we're talking about it, I think I've done, which might be useful. I think I've always asked them, like, what do they think? So whether it's about like, well, what do you want to wear today? And that Ian will be like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, what do you think? Or like giving them choices where they can have autonomy and there's low risk, but I think I've always, from when they were very little, kind of just thrown back to them whatever they've asked me. I'll be like, well, what do you think? Like, and I think they then get used to it. And the other thing we've been doing as a family since they were really quite young is family circles where there's something, whatever it is, like bath time, bedtime, as soon as they can actually, have an opinion on something, we use family circles. And again, kids now say we need to do one of those circle things, often when they think I'm being unreasonable about something. So I think it's just following the principles. What do you think?
Well, in response to that, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's interesting, and I completely agree. It's easy to lose sight of them having feelings and, you know, being little thinkers when you're just trying to survive and get things done. So I will definitely take on board to just take that time, and also telling my husband as well, because I think it's important that, you know, you, if you are in the couple, that you have that same approach, and, you know, you go about it together. I really encourage him to read this book as well. And Family Circles sounds, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of that now. She's only 2, so maybe not yet, but I can really see the logic behind that, because you talk about that as well, don't you, in the book, the family circle.
We talked about this on the podcast, and I don't think it got reflected quite as well, but I do think there is something about, like, kids aren't mini adults. You know, sometimes we expect them to communicate in a way that, like, we communicate as adults, and kids communicate really quite clearly, you know, but they might not as verbally, you know, they communicate with feelings, they communicate in their bodies, they communicate, like, they'll touch you, or, you know, depending on your child, you know, they communicate in very different ways. And I think we have an expectation they're going to communicate like we'd communicate with a business person. And then it's like, oh, it's frustrating. And it's like, oh, no, they are communicating all the time. But are we present enough to tune in? And sometimes it's really hard to understand what they're communicating, because it doesn't feel, it's not linear.
Yeah.
You know, again, I think
they
most
might
of
not
us,
even really know.
they don't know. They've just got this feeling. And so I think there is something about, like, yeah, can we tune into the feeling, and then we'll work out.
Is there a particular age that you think it does start to shift, and that you can really embed some of these more fully, or is it just really natural evolution?
I mean, I would say it's just really exciting, Lucy, that you're reading it with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. It's almost like, well, you're there, you're right at the beginning, and actually trying it out and letting us know what works and what doesn't, and just seeing, will this be useful in this situation, you know, rather than, because we don't totally know, do we? We could make loads of decisions like, yeah, begin when they're 3, but actually I think you can begin when they're having tantrums. The feelings one is probably really useful, hopefully. So yeah, it'd be good to hear from you what you think.
Can I just say something? Because Sophie, you said something about risk or low risk, and not intervening. And I think one of the issues that I have probably passed down the generations is that we have a very high level or whatever the bar is. It's a low bar for risk, and so we are all driven to I think we have a tendency to be quite advisory. Just because of that very low bar and over worrying about the risk. So I don't know whether that's something as well that is how you overcome some of those barriers that can then stop you from giving people time to think it through for themselves.
I mean, I suppose from a thinking environment perspective, we'd want to be looking at some of the assumptions that are driving that. You know, I think it's we all have where we sit with risk will be very dependent on, you know, where we are. But I think what drives that is often we don't want our kids to experience the hurt, the disappointment, the heartbreak, the pain maybe we felt. And so we have this overriding desire to save them, maybe from the very things that we fear. And I don't think I don't think we can do that. So I think what we end up with, I think I've got this from Elizabeth Gilbert, you know, she says it's like what we crave is control, and what we end up with is anxiety. Like there is no control with children, is there? I mean, it's awful to think like my 2 beautiful kids are gonna experience pain and, you know, all of the feels. So I think there's something about that, but we want, you know, but also reframing some of, like, there are some things where if we don't learn to trust ourselves, like what's the bigger risk? What's the bigger risk? And just there was something on all of this conversation that is like the essence of the thinking environment isn't what we do. Like it's not a to-do list. It's not a if you do X, you end up with Y. It's who are we being with each other? What's the intention of our way of being with each other? And so I think that, like, even if I know, like, say in your family, Claire, like I feel more risk averse, it's like, okay, well, how can I be more at ease with that? How can I be kind to myself? How can I, just have gentleness around it? Rather than be like, oh, I should be more, I'm going to just jump off things and I'm going to just throw, it's like, it's just, can we be with each other and ourselves in a way that says, okay, I see that. And it's hard, sometimes you want to be risk averse, and sometimes you don't. So.
I mean, I could probably say a few things, but Sue, did you have your hand up before I know you wanted
I keep kind of going like that and
to...
then thinking, oh
So
no.
because
I'm probably about to say something controversial, but I think it links in with equality. So the other thing to remember is it can become quite Puritan and perfectionist, and I've got to be trying to do this all the time. When actually, when I've been in schools and like you said earlier, when they're hearing the equality of the adult being the human too, and them seeing us stuff up and be annoyed, or like, with the best will in the world, like my two sons are high on the spectrum, so if I'd have tried to be interested in everything, I'd have been there for hours. So that very much affects boundaries. So it's that I think for me there's an equality in being messily human along with them as well. And I know this doesn't contradict that, but when you know how brilliant the thinking environment is, there's that tendency to be trying to be that all the time, but then you lose the mess, which is equally beautiful, isn't it? So and I mean, I got it way too late. My sons were, if I started trying to do the family circles, oh my word, you should have seen them. They were teenagers and in sixth form, no chance. And when I did that jumping in, if they asked me something for advice or even not, I remember them vividly saying, well, I don't remember asking. So that rammed down the information thing, that if they ask, you don't want to overshare, do you? So it's absolutely brilliant, but also part of the brilliance is that equality of being messy and stuffed up most days as well, because otherwise that's how they feel too. So they start to feel less than if someone else is managing to be composed. And do you think then? And oh, that, if my sons are talking about Leeds United, oh, that's so interesting. Thank you. You can end up being a bit fake, can't you, as well? Whereas, do you know what? I'm not in the space yet. Can I have time out and can we talk about it for a few minutes later? You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
I totally agree with that. So one of the sort of trigger words is, as a parent, I think, is the word should. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And so the more books I read, I almost don't want to read any more books because it's going to tell me what I should be doing. And so I think it's really important for you to just be at the heart of it, and just going back to what Sophie was saying, it's not doing stuff, it's being stuff and having the intention to try. And then realizing, so I can definitely give stories of when I've said the wrong thing, I've said too much. And maybe because I'm a bit more aware, I've realized, and then I've started beating myself up about it. And the main thing I can say there is if I'm brave enough in that moment to go back and go, I messed up there, I should have said this, I think that has a much bigger impact. But it does feel quite courageous as a parent to go, I've made a mistake, I shouldn't have done that.
Just a little thought of encouragement. I wonder if we all do a little bit of this, even half decent, we're probably doing a lot more than most. Because you can set yourself up for failure by trying to be the perfect thinking partner, the perfect parent, and we're all making it up as we go along anyway. But I just think if we all try, we're going to be doing a lot better than most. I'd love to hear from two or three who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Have we got time for that?
Yeah, of course. If there's
People want to.
Yeah, I want to welcome as well Chris and Celine who came later. So we missed saying hello to you. If you're happy to just sort of introduce yourselves, feel free to we just did an opening round where we just introduced ourselves and said a little bit about, have we got children or grandchildren or, so anything like that would be lovely to hear from you.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
I'm Chris. I came to this fairly late in the game. I'm in Costa Rica in nature. So I was listening to howling monkeys, insects, frogs, dawn chorus, just totally taken away. So I've got 4 children of my own. We're all on the spectrum, and they are as well. I've now got 2 grandchildren and another one on its way. And I just feel it's every child is different. Everyone needs to be handled differently. And this is not a how-to book. It's guidelines. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of being. So thank you both. Wonderful.
Thank you. How wonderful. Do you live in Costa Rica or are
No,
you?
no. It's a long story. I'm on a journey. So my nephew's getting married tomorrow in Costa Rica, and my brother's building an eco resort in Costa Rica. So it was the right place to be at the right time.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking time out from the monkeys and joining this conversation. So kind.
No, I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. Celine, lovely to see you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm on the other side of the world. I'm in Thailand, and I live in Thailand, so I'm not just visiting. I've been in Asia, Southeast Asia for almost 13 years now, and living now in Thailand, Phuket, is where I'm based now. I haven't received the book yet. I'm deeply frustrated because I like to believe I was one of the first to order it. When I saw the email go out, I pounced on it. And I don't know, maybe it's lost in the mail. Maybe it's, there's been a recent incident like that as well where stuff didn't come. So never had a problem 4 years, but I just haven't received it. So I'm sorry, I haven't read it yet. But I like to believe that I am raising 2 thinkers. I have a 10 and a 13-year-old, 2 boys. That's why I can't wait to read the book because I think I want to share that I'm at the doors of that teenage years. So I've sort of now I feel, and actually this week I was talking to friends about it. I'm feeling really strongly now about this independent thinking for children. Because I'm seeing, of course, the disasters of phones and devices. I'm surrounded, probably like in the UK, but I don't know how bad it is in the UK. I was deeply touched, by the way, by adolescence. That sort of touched me at a deepest level, and it's touched everyone around me, including my parents, who I didn't even think would be touched by this, but it has touched everybody. So I do recommend everyone watches this. Yeah, I'm surrounded by, sometimes I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of bad parenting here, Phuket. A lot of children that are stuck on devices hours and hours, have no boundaries, no limits. And of course, we're kind of bad parents in that. I think my kids understand that, but we're not the cool parents because we have boundaries and we have time limits. And so I think and actually last night again, I'm solo mom for the next 2 weeks, and last night we were having a bit of an argument around sort of setting boundaries around times and screens. And as I was getting annoyed, I was saying to him, but I just want you to, I said, whilst you're living under my roof, and I just know this is not at all open conversation at this point in time, but I said, I want to give you the gift of thinking for yourself. And I will defend that above everything else. If that means being a bad mom, if that means setting boundaries, I will do that. And then looked at me and said, but mom, what's the point if we're the only people that can do that? I said, well, you'll never be the only ones that can do that. But even if you were, it doesn't matter because I feel that's the right thing to do and I'm going to do it. And I do not want those devices and social media to tell you what to think. I want you to. There was a real moment of I actually felt quite proud of this. So I was like, I'm getting angry. I'm not showing sort of this open conversation, but it was just a moment where I just had to state it. And I said, that's what you're going to get until you leave this home. When you leave this home, if you want to spend your time on devices and get sucked into that, you can do that. That will be your life you choose. So that was a big moment. And then later on, just maybe an hour later, my youngest was in his bed, and he's been saying to me lately that you don't listen to me. So ironically, again, I'm also a time to think facilitator, but and I'm coach, so it's always hard when your 10-year-old tells you don't listen to me. But I decided, okay, I'm going to listen to him, and I let him. He went on and started thinking by himself, and he had this beautiful moment of thinking by himself. And so I'm a firm believer children think by themselves. I didn't believe it 6 months ago. I saw it in my eldest, my 13-year-old wanted to do a time to think, like a formal time to think, a thinking partnership. He blew my mind. He blew my mind. He blew his own mind. I was just like, I didn't even think it would be possible as a 13-year-old, but he did it. He went into thinking for himself, and he had a breakthrough. And he was almost emotional about it. And I was like, okay, sold. This works. And then my younger one yesterday we weren't doing a thinking partnership, but I just backed off. I listened to him. He went on into this whole world around how the world is maybe wrong, and how he doesn't really know what the world's going to become. And at the end, I said goodnight. He said to me, Mum, I said, yeah. He said, thank you for this conversation. I feel much better. And I thought, so firm believer, and I can't wait to read the book to learn more.
That is oh God, that's so inspiring to hear, Celine. Even without the book, you're really putting it into practice.
I
But
will
also,
send you another copy, Celine. We will get it. It
Well,
was one of
let
the
me
first
check.
ones out, so it should be. I'll send you another copy. Maybe we could just invite Mira if you wanted to come in, and then we need to close, Rach.
So it's a reflection, and yeah, and kind of some of the sharing actually answered my question. So I was kind of looking forward if I could try a thinking pair with my daughter. Unfortunately, most often now she responds as I don't know on a question, what do you think? It's become a default answer, which is quite frustrating. I just bite my tongue there and swallow. The appreciation is my challenge. So the least love language of mine is the words of affirmation. And that's very interesting because I believe that is because maybe the way I was brought up had a lot of praise words in the form of feedback of fulfilling my expected role as a child within the family. I am very short of my appreciation words, and I'm because time is short for me, and especially when it was a survival years when I decided to separate from the father of my daughter. It's the short time makes me think I need to make the most of that time because it's so precious. So it literally needs to be so important. And it took me a long time to understand how to work with me actually being a female, which we don't get taught. Because you have power in your female hormones, and ideally you utilize this in your parenting as well as a mom. And then you can bring that knowledge to your children as well, as you will have the phases where you have those flow days. And in those flow days, you can execute quite a bit. And then you have this weak phase of your cycle where everything that you will be liking, like it will come to you and you'll be like, but 2 days ago, I wouldn't have done that. I just did it now. And understanding that helps a lot as well. And Lucy is not there. Something I really treasure I did with my daughter, and I keep doing it to this day. I would give the choice. It will be obviously controlled choice. However, the choice was there. So even at feeding time, I would have 2 forks and I'll just go like that. And she will pick up the fork. And that will be the choice. It doesn't require talking, doesn't require anything. I will just kind of provide it in a way. So, or if we play puzzles, I will let her think in her child mind, and then maybe I'll even guide her to the wrong puzzle slot, so she sees that it's the wrong one, and then until she gets to, so there is a little bit of a kind of go around way, a little bit of a difficulty create there, so she can stay with those feelings of getting annoyed that she's not getting it. So that was something that I remembered as I always thought I wouldn't forget things. You forget a lot of the things you've done in the area listening, you focus on other things. So appreciation is going to be the first thing I'm going to work on, and I'm so grateful you actually put words in my mouth with the end list on the book. As I think because of me trying to be time efficient, I micromanage a lot. And that, I think, sounds as a criticism rather than me going with the appreciation. So I'm very interested how you actually practically do this on daily basis to get it as an appreciation rather than a feedback. As I learned from Tisha the difference, and I'm fascinated, and I know why words of affirmation don't work for me, because they had come as a feedback rather than appreciation. So I'll be very interested for that. And the other thing is, the other question that it came through is, some people work with primary care children. I wondered if the council format from the thinking environment has ever been tried with children as well. I was interested in that. Thank you.
Yeah, shall I just quickly, and then I know we'll just finish off with a round. So just to say, how do you try the appreciation without it being feedback? I love the fact that you can see that distinction, Mira. And I would just say, it's about giving it in moments that don't need anything said. You know what I mean? It's almost like the moment, it's not after they've done something, it's in a moment when you're watching TV and you're not really in the room, and then suddenly you say something like, I really appreciate this in you. So thinking of it separate to what they're doing, but so that you can link it to who they are rather than what they've done. But brilliant. And yes, I've done the Thinking Council with literally primary school children, and they absolutely get it. They're great at it and they love it. They love being asked. So it'd be good to talk to Mark about that as well, but I know we might be running out of time, but let's have another conversation about that. I'd love to. So.
Oh, goodness, I feel it's been a joy. But maybe just to finish, we could, maybe I'll just invite each of you in, and maybe you could share, like, what's a gem or an insight? What's something that you're taking away from the call today, or what would you like to leave in the room before we leave? Maybe I could start with Sue, then Mira, and then Cherie.
Oh, I'm not ready. Can I pass?
Yeah. So Mira, Cherie, then Mark.
I think I just appreciate that this exists, that you created that work. It's so timely. And it creates a sense of belonging, as I appear to be in a little bit of my own bubble, trying to live this kind of life compared to the community I have around me. So, and the experience of the other people here, I think I really appreciate that. I'm just going to take it forward. It's reaffirming that my own thinking seems to be in the right pathway. So thank you.
Cherie, Mark, then Ursula.
Thank you, Sophie. I've felt it's been very reaffirming to me, and I hope you feel appreciated and proud. So this global connection that's happened just in this short time today has just been wonderful, really. And I've also kind of learnt to perhaps all these feelings of guilt I've had over the years has been a waste of wasted emotion, so as well. But so thank you as well for today. Really grateful. Thank you
So much.
Yeah, I've just really enjoyed and appreciated listening to you all and hearing your own experiences, because we're all in different contexts. So thank you. And thank you particularly Rachel and Sophie, because I know how hard it is to write a book, and particularly for you to write something as simple as you have. That's the other side of complexity, and the fact that you were brave enough to do that and put in the hard yards is why it's an effective book, when so many books are just full of words. So just grateful to you two, and I just want to encourage you both in pursuing what you do with this now, and any support we can give to an onward journey. Super excited to chat again, but thank you for the call as well today. Really appreciated.
Yeah, thank
so
you,
much.
Sophie and Rachel and everyone. I have left with a million questions. My brain is buzzing. So thank you, everyone. It's been such a lovely way to spend time with all of you. I think one thing I've left with is this sense of ease about being a parent. And I subscribe to what Sue said about we're all human. We get it wrong. We get it right. We're just doing our best by our kids. And one thing that has really worked for me as my children have got older is to ask for feedback. So not give feedback, but ask for it. And they have been so insightful. And as you well know, children tell you the truth, so that's really helped me in just, owning up to them and saying, I'm a human, I don't get it right, I'm vulnerable, I have my things I'm good at, there's lots of stuff that I'm not good at, but I'm here for you. And so that sense of ease, which is being, who you are and showing up when you can. So thanks, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
We've got Claire and Lucy and then Celine.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate the thanks from everybody. I haven't actually read the book yet. I hadn't admitted that, but because it was sent to Lucy, so I've read a bit of it, but I'm very inspired now. And because we've worked together for a long a while now, Rachel, there's a lot of what's been talked about that I've already learned from you in practice. So it's wonderful. The main thing I think I'm going to take away from this was your point about being, not doing. And I think that's a really helpful. And to take Cherie's point, it's, who do you want to turn up as, rather than just thinking about each and every step you take and feeling bad about each of them. And I'm going to hand it to Lucy, who's brought the other child.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for bearing with me and my children. I really enjoyed the book and the session. Thank you so much. And sorry, I missed the question, but I assume it's what you're taking away from today. I feel energized and excited to parent and to coach. So I feel like that's probably quite a good outcome. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Celine and then Sue.
And for me, I said the first word that popped in my head when you asked that question was the hope. I think just talking about this and being here. I know it's a small, tiny sample of humanity, but I think it's a sense of hope. This book out there is a little light in sort of the future. I do get sometimes a bit down by what we're seeing. I think we all do to some extent. And I feel how it's fired me up again. And I'm tapping into, I've been feeling for a long time that, like, if someone asked me to dedicate the rest of my life to helping the younger generation get through what they're facing right now, I would do it without a doubt. It wouldn't be about money. It wouldn't be about anything. And I feel we're letting them down very much. I feel we've let them down. We're too busy dealing with our own problems. And I feel, why are we not prepping these people for tomorrow? Like, forget what we've done wrong. Like, let's put all our focus. Let's coach these people more than, coaching even the C-suite leaders that we're coaching right now, because, for the reasons we're doing it. But so something's firing up inside me, and I feel like saying to you, I want to talk to you. How do we get this into a webinar course? How can I bring it to Asia? Like, let's spread it. Let's just get it out there and educate, build awareness for parents. And the last thing I wanted to finish, because I did write a note down to not forget this, is I think one of the things I ever said as a parent and was I keep on telling my children, I don't know what I'm doing. I have never done this job before. And every time you're getting older, I don't know this. So you're going to have to bear with me with making all the mistakes I'm making. It's as if you're asking me to be good on the first day of my job. I will never be good at this. I will figure this out maybe when I'm a grandparent. I'll look back and I'll say I got this, but I haven't got this. And that was the biggest thing for me, to really be able to say that to my kids. And I remind them sometimes that I'm getting it wrong all the time. I'm learning on the job. And excuse me if I learned how to parent an 8-year-old by the time you're 10, and now you're 10-year-old, I don't know how to parent a 10. So that's me and all my messiness, but I'm doing the work. I'm learning. I'm here. You're here. And I'm like, we're way ahead, many other parents that are not even sort of engaging. So I'm like, it's the right thing. So thank you. Thank you for having a session, and can't wait to see the book. And by the way, Sophie, maybe send the book to my French address, because I'll be in Europe in a few months. Might be safer. So I'll write
email you and we can work out the best address.
Okay.
And Sue, just final last words.
Just I think I have to come back to the boldness and the perfection of your title, raising thinkers in a world that doesn't want them to think for themselves. And the biggest place they're restricted in is schools, for sure. So keep going.
Well, thank you so much. We will be in touch. It would be lovely for this to be a little ripple, and we'll work out how we spread it and how we share it, and anything you can do to seed it in your worlds would be wonderful. But yeah, we always wanted this to be the start of a conversation, not the end. And so I think the more of us that are doing this, the better. But maybe wait, should we take a picture? Should we just,
Yes.
because we're all here, if we have our books, or we can just have you. Can you do a screenshot? I think you've got control of the.
Took it out.
Go and get the book.
Hang on. I'm seeing if I can do a screenshot.
Want me to do it if not?
This is just rubbing it in for Celine, isn't it?
I know.
No.
I'm just feeling like, should I was about to say, do you want me to step out the session right now?
Actually, Celine's book was the first tranche that went out, so I don't. Yeah, it's Singapore. It must
Will
be
you just
Singapore.
maybe I'll hold my hand. You can Photoshop
We
it.
should just hold on like this. Do it, Rach.
Yes, I've just done it. So hang on. Is everybody ready?
And Sue's book is not visible yet. It's blurred.
Back, Sue. Put it back with you.
We need Sue.
In front of you. In front of you. Oh.
Oh, there you go.
That's it. But now down a bit so we can see your face. Yeah, I've got you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much.
It means
Thank
the
you.
world.
Yeah,
Mwah.
thank you.
Sophie, if you tag that photo in LinkedIn, we can all put comments on and get a bit of traction on it.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank
Go
you.
well. Go well,
Thank
man.
you.
Good weekend,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
We'll have another one
Bye.
of these as well, definitely. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.